We are on. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeanette Bradley. I'm your host of the podcast, What Is The Ask, coming to you from Tampa, Florida, exploring issues important to Black people in America before the 2024 presidential election, which will take place on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. So, as a group of 5 friends from Tampa and Atlanta, we meet twice a month to talk about stuff. We talk about the stuff we may not be paying attention to. So tonight, Celeste Mona Judge here from Tampa with me, and Albert Fields in Atlanta will come together as our distinguished panel. So the three of us will talk about reparations. So we were going to talk about the Supreme Court, but because Attorney Alton Drew, also out of Atlanta, will not be here tonight, we've decided that reparations is a very important issue for us to really have an understanding of before we get to that vote. And how does it impact descendants of slaves, American descendants of slaves? I want to make sure I say that right. So
Well,
yeah. So Albert, given everything that's going on in America today, with this rise in very visible anti-Blackness, how in the world do we move toward anything that's specific, anything good that's specific for Black folk? So we're going to vote, but how do we make this move given the democracy question? And please don't focus on democracy tonight. We're going to focus on
no, I'm actually thinking about your question about reparations. And
yes.
in preparing for this show, I started thumbing back through the annals of time to see what had been done about it. Now, before I go any further, though, you threw out American descendants of slavery
Yes.
as a group. I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit, because that's a backdrop to some of the things that I want to talk about as well.
Yeah.
In terms of reparation, what is this group that you're talking about, this American descendants of slavery?
So this is a group that I am just now joining, but I've heard about it for at least the past 5 or 6 years, and I've been doing a little bit of research on it. And Mona likely can give a better understanding of it, but Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, they call it Tone. They do a broadcast, each of them, Talking Brown or Breaking Brown and Tone with Tone Talks. And they talk about, well, they actually created this movement. I'm going to call it a movement a while ago. But what I like about this particular movement, which is called American Descendants of Slaves, a term that they came up with to describe people who were born, who are descendants of Americans, slaves in the United States. And I want to be kind of careful with that, because I remember a professor at Florida State said to me, well, you got to be careful with that term because it could mean any of the Americas. And I thought, So I think they are getting they are the most specific movement so far who has pretty much detailed what it means and what should happen. And I'm going to pair that with things that William Darity is talking about and doing, and some others. But ADOS seems to be the one that are creating the real movement, in my opinion. And they're that group that I think that more people, more Black people, whether you are ADOS or not, need to pay attention to. Mona, you got any thoughts about it? Since I was introduced mainly by you and Craig Fox.
Yeah. So it's for those Black Americans who could trace their lineage back to Africa through chattel slavery here in the United States. So it is a very specific group, and they have been probably doing this work for a little over 15 years. All of the
Wow.
study, all of the research. So yeah, no, you
So
pretty
now,
much gave.
so let me follow up with a question, because as I understand the little bit I read about them, they only want a certain group to get reparations from America.
That is
And
correct.
that is a group that if you cannot prove that you are an American descendant of slavery, they say you're not owed reparations. Is that how does that work?
Yeah, well, because their ancestors did not have that 400 years. You know, you have 400 years, you're tied to someone who had over 400 years of slavery here in America. Now, we do know that slavery was all along the Caribbean coast, and those people we're seeing um, as they're not entitled, but just not through the United States.
They're entitled to reparations that are attached to them and the colonizers who may have colonized in, let's say, Jamaica or the Bahamas or what have you. Now, as I looked through my ancestry in the last couple of years, I discovered that my grandfather, who I never knew on my dad's side, was 100% Bahamian. I didn't know that. Nobody in the family, absolutely, we didn't know. My dad, I guess, died not really understanding that he was actually a Bahamian part, because, well, half and half. So I'm looking at that to say, wow, if there's some claims over there, then perhaps I have some claim. But other than that, I don't have claims to any kind of reparations recouped from, let's say, Britain, if Jamaica and those, or France for what is it, Haiti and France?
Haiti and France, right?
Yeah. So if they want to make claims to those countries, God bless you. Make that thing happen. And I'll be proud of you. And if you're living in the United States and you've got claim to whatever it's been awarded there, wonderful. I don't have claim to that. And the same should be true for America. So to Mona's point, the lineage has to tie you back to slaves that hit this shore, and you've got to be able to demonstrate that.
Yes.
Now, given all of the tricks that were played on us, given all the information that was hidden from us, there's a strong chance that the majority of us could not make that claim. Yet, we are descendants of Africans that were enslaved here in the country. So, how are we going to rectify that?
So I don't know the tricks or what have you. Because I did go and look up my lineage, I was able to trace myself back. Now, it did stop at 1838. So that's, slavery was abolished in 1865. After anything before 1838, I cannot get my hands on. So it's going to take a lot more research. I do believe that most of us, if not all of us, can trace our lineage back.
Absolutely.
We can do it, can be done. The
It can
record
be,
is there.
yes.
Mona,
Now,
they made us change. Hold on.
trace it
They
all the way back, but it's certainly, where else did you come from?
Well, first of all, they stole us. They changed our names.
Yes,
They changed our ability to name ourselves. They
yes,
separated families on a regular basis.
yes.
They condemned any kind of activity that would even tie us back to Africa. So, with that in mind, those are the kind of tricks that I'm talking about, Jeanette.
Yep.
So now, if you were to actually be successful enough to get your claim heard that
Right.
your family was due reparations, the question is, how do you prove that? Since I've already fixed it, I've already erased all the documents. You can go to ancestry.com all you want to, and they might tell you, Mona, that you have 80% Nigerian, African in your blood. But
Mm-hmm.
how does that tie you to the American descendants of slaves? That's the trick that I'm saying that is
You,
going to be played.
when you do the ancestry, you are actually tracing your lineage back through documents. So when I said 1838 is as far as I could go, I could actually get to Benjamin Jones, right? Who was married to, and it doesn't, I don't even have who he was married to, but I can trace back through census data, through slave bills, through what have you, how it all ties. When I took the DNA test on top of that, now I've got people that are attached based on DNA in the 18th century, 17th century. And now I've got people that I'm getting suggestions of, you share DNA on this level with these people. They may be third, fourth, fifth cousins, what have you. And then I have to start exploring it. But it's all through documentation. And if I want, then DNA on top of it. It's how I found out that I'm also Bahamian through my cousins, the Swedens, who tracked me down. And it's like, now we're family. And the way that happened was, my grandmother lived on one street, and 3 streets over, there was this other family, and he would tip over, and that's how they got together. So they were never actually married, but you can find your lineage
Sure.
legitimately through the records that are kept. And right now, for whatever reason, the Mormons have this whole big database of information, but you can also find it in other countries as well. So it's the data that you can find that tells you your family.
How far can you go back, Mona? How far can you go back in your family?
So, because I haven't did the ancestry, but on my mom's side, I could go back to not her mother, but we could go back to her father, his father, and
Wow.
his. So I could go back 3.
You can go back 3, 4 generations.
From my dad, from my mom's granddaddy.
Who was a slave? Who was a slave in that pile?
So, 2 of them was.
I was gonna say, you went back further than I do, so you had to have had 2 slaves.
Yeah, 2 of
No,
them.
wait a minute. Did she really have to have 2 slaves, or did she happen to have some freedmans? I think is what they would call back
could.
then.
And,
She
and
could
you're
have
right,
had freedmans back then.
she could have.
We
She could have, that's true.
But which was my grandfather's, he was my great grandfather, actually. My great grandfather was born a freeman because it came out of, it was his grandfather, his father. Yes, he wasn't born in slavery. But
Okay, therefore she doesn't get reparations. Okay, she done.
Why?
Because her family was a freeman, and the only way you could get
No, I think slavery.
reparations for slavery was you
She's
had.
not saying, you're
Yes.
saying if her father was a freedman.
I
She
thought
doesn't
that's what she
get-
said. Didn't you say that your great grandfather was a freedman?
No,
No.
Hold on, Jeanette. I thought that's what I heard. Help me.
okay,
now.
but that's not what you heard. I'm
Okay,
telling
so
you,
wait,
that's not
tell me what she said. Tell me what she said.
And it certainly isn't what I meant. Okay,
It may
so
not be what you meant, but my question is, what did you say? Come on, Judge, make her answer the question.
all right. So I know that my great grandfather, which was his last name was Wynn. Okay, so that was my grandmother's father. And so, and these people were so young when they got married, because I can remember him almost better than I can remember her husband, because I don't know why. So we know his father, and then they could go back to his father and one more father.
And where does the slave come in?
So that was 4 That was 4 wins.
I'm with you. I'm with you. My question is not how far you can go back, but where do you pick up slavery?
I think the main one that was probably in the heat of it was the fourth one. The third one, you know, I do know by the time my granddaddy was born, because they say he was born in poverty, so slavery had to be over.
My question again: if I'm gonna pay you I'm needling you, of course,
And you ain't gotta
You
pay
to
know,
me
make a point. I'm needling you to make a point.
because these 4 wasn't, but 4 and 5 before them was.
How do you know? You don't know who they are.
Where they came from?
They Africans have been here for eon. In fact, Ivan Van Sertima claims that Africans were here long before Columbus even got here. He has a book out called Before Columbus. So they could have been here on this planet, on this continent, working, doing their regular deal.
But
That could be your family. So I ain't paying you no money, Jeanette.
we do know no free slaves. It was no free slaves even during that time down in the South, and all of our people are from the deep South.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're speculating, and if I'm an attorney, I'm going to say to you, unless you can bring me documentation, and the point I was needling and getting to is this: the courts and all the legal folks who we keep going to have been all of a sudden using a favorite phrase, strict scrutiny tied to a specific harm. And in fact, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it, but the last survivor of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma,
Yeah, I just
who
heard.
was a part of that, who was suing for reparations, she finally survived. She's the last one standing, and she finally got her case brought before the Supreme Court in Oklahoma, and they told her no.
Yeah.
Turned down her request because they said she could not tie to any specific harm done to her.
No, they said that she could not tie the people that's living, I think. Didn't they say that? And see,
They would not allow her to bring suit so that
no,
she could not get reparations.
that is BS, and they will appeal. And the woman who presided over that case, I did some research on her. I just said that they were hoping that woman died because it spun out over 2 years. She's 109. Who would have imagined? So it will get appealed. The family will eventually win.
I think so too. I agree that the courts are stacked in a way, and the times are such that uh, they don't want stuff like this to win, and they were hoping that she would die.
Yeah, they were hoping she would die because I kept thinking, even when they brought it at 107, come on.
Yeah, so I hear the sort of disappointment around the fact that you can't even recognize the trauma that this 100-something-year-old woman experienced, and realize that you need to pay. The more we get around talking about reparations and demonstrating harm,
Yeah.
the harder I think white supremacy is going to fight against it. And I think the whole legal battle is one thing, but I think it's going to be more public opinion when it does win. And I don't feel like the way that we've been approaching it is really going to make any headway. Public opinion and through political will, eventually that's where.
You said we're going to vote. What are you suggesting? We vote reparations in?
I don't think right now it's we've spent the last 200 or so years, 150, 200 years indoctrinating Americans, including Black people, that Black people just our problem is really our own. People believe that, even us, and that it has nothing to do with white people's oppression on our abilities to be in the highest offices and doing what have you. So I truly believe that this country has been indoctrinated to maintain that racial hierarchy that keeps us at the bottom. And as a result of that, because I kind of feel like you don't have, because you don't know, you're lazy, or you're doing the victim thing and what have you. We believe that about ourselves. We believe that they believe that about us. So when you put it out there in the public sphere, you're not going to get the support. But we already know who controls the courts and who controls politics. It's those white millionaires who are saying, I'll be darned if I pay you what I owe you, because nobody really knows that I do owe you that, because we've done a good job of pretty much pulling the wool over everybody's eyes for 150 years.
So Mona, knowing what Jeanette just said, I'm gonna buy your story. So knowing that, what would make you so optimistic that Black folk in America could get reparations?
Because the powers to be, unlike the poor or the lower class white people, the white power to be, they know what they've done. They know how they've gotten here. They know that they're not where they're at on their own. The majority, we would say 80%, they know that. And they eventually, Albert, and I don't understand why we fight for as long as we fight, because all they do is make it harder for generation after generation on their people as well, because it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the 20s, the 30s, but it is going to happen. It is old. It is a debt that is old. And once we rally enough of us, that's the problem.
Mona, we started asking for reparations in
I know.
1866.
I know. And we've been
We
doing
started
it.
asking in 1860. Now, I don't have a calculator, but how many hundreds of years is that?
But it's
Yes.
not to us. It is
But-
not. It's like anything else we have been able to accomplish. It hasn't just been us. It has been us and white people. So the fact that white people right now, and I think I mentioned this, or I put it into our text strand, that if the poll was that when it was asked first, do Black people deserve reparations, and it was across the board 4%, and then that went to 16%, and now it's at 30%. You have got to look at public opinion and their understanding of what has happened in this country, and the fact that we don't know I mean, who heard of Black Wall Street until I mean, I heard about it when I was in my 40s and 50s.
Right.
It's crazy, but it
Yeah.
happened.
It happened. They're almost making it seem like, as the lady was reading it didn't happen.
So we have to figure out the strategy. You know, Albert, I'm always saying, so what's the plan? So what's the plan? And we don't have a plan for how we are going to shift American, the way America sees itself, to get whatever those things are that are on a Black agenda, if you will. And I'm just going to call it a Black agenda. And in this case, reparations. There is no path to that without my white friends understanding exactly why that makes sense. So if I'm spending my time talking about history as it is, and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. Well, now you do know. So now how do you feel about it?
So here's what I'm going to say to you. Those people are dead. That's in the past. That has nothing to do
Oh my God.
with what is going on in America. You're free. Look how successful you are. Mona, look at you. You're second generation businesswoman in America. And then you're going
Yeah.
to tell me that you think somebody owes you some money after all the
Yeah.
hard work and you pull yourself up by the boots, and anybody else that hadn't done that, I don't really have time to talk to them.
Well, you make the business case.
When you look at that,
you-
when you look at that social wealth gap, no matter
But
where we at,
that's because
and
people
Jeanette,
are lazy. If they didn't, if look, everybody in America has the opportunity to get up in the morning, put their boots up, and start running. And at the end of the day, everybody comes home that hunted well. They got food on the table. If you didn't hunt well, you don't eat that night. And if you sitting around lazy waiting on me to bring you some food, I'm going to tell you, you got another thing coming because I got mine. That's the American way.
But your dad, see, your dad and your granddaddy was able to, and you're lazy too, okay? But
No, not me. I'm just like y'all. I'm successful. I got mine. I don't need the reparations.
you're my cousin. I'm talking
That's why
about
I'm
my
Republican.
white cousins, and now you're just living off of your grandfather inheritance and your dad's inheritance, and you're lazy. We never figured that out.
but here's the deal. So the country is stratified, if you will. So we got our really, really rich people. And if you look at the richest people in America and you decide who's at the top, and that's all you're going to look at. I'm just going to look at those who we consider rich. Who's at the top and who's at the bottom. And you can go to Forbes 400 or 500, whatever it is, and you will definitely see Black rich people are all at the bottom, and they're at the bottom. They're poor compared to, let's say, Elon Musk. So if you say, everybody likes to say Oprah. Well, if Oprah is 2.5 or 3 billion, what is Elon Musk? He's around 70, 80 billion. You have to compare that. Then you go to, let's say, the upper middle class. You go to the upper middle class and you compare yourselves against your peers. Who is at the top and who is at the bottom? Who are the CEOs in this country and who are not? But who, just look at that group. Then you go to your working class. Who is at the top and who is at the bottom? And even when you go to your poor, because that's where you even have some of your Black working class, even some of your Black college graduates who are making less than even the poor people in the white.
Yeah.
Why do we have a structure that way? Are Black people that stupid that even against our peers, we cannot measure up? There has to be an answer for that. The answer has to do with systemic racism and the oppression that we have experienced. And if we are able to get through, let's say, our richest people, let's look at our richest, let's go back to them. How did they make their money? That's the question. And if it was entertainment, then how is that really realizing the American dream? Because most of us are not entertainers and most of us can't do sports.
So let's talk about what America is. I think it was Frederick Douglass who said that America was the land of the thieves and the home of the slaves. And he talked about that in terms of how America got rich. When you look at, for instance, the guy who owns Microsoft, Bill, what's his name? Bill Gates. If you look at him, the history of him running little smaller companies out of business who refused to kowtow to his demands on his software. That was him as a thief robbing other people of the ability to meet this American dream. And then I'm going to challenge you one more time. I tried to find one treaty, one concept that America signed on to that they said they would pay for, that they actually followed through on. I haven't found it yet. Every treaty they made with the indigenous people, They might go for a little while, but when it suited their financial needs, they would then break that treaty.
Hmm.
Likewise, for instance, we talk about Haiti and everybody talks about why they're so poor.
Right.
Some history for you. They broke away from France. You know about they had the war and
Correct.
Dessalines and the other leader of the Haitian Revolution took over and do you know that's the only country ever to win a war against somebody else and they had to pay reparations to the losing country?
Yeah, they
France
had.
lost. Yeah, France lost. They got kicked out of, but here's what happened. America joined with France and came back after they got defeated and say, look, if you don't pay us for the wrong that you have done to us, then we are going to attack you again. And we're going to keep on attacking you with the support of America. Because what was going on during the time that Haiti was trying to get their freedom? America
Yeah.
was enslaving black
I
folks.
was going to say slavery.
Yeah,
And
and they could not afford to have a country like Haiti sitting there full of free black folk living the life.
Hmm.
And so they joined with France and they went back in and threatened them. The Haitian government had to pay $23 billion by today's dollar standards in
Right.
reparations to France because guess what? France said that you did us wrong by winning your freedom.
Wow.
That was what they did.
Well, that's why Haiti is in such a mess.
Well, and it goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that. America then went in later on and invaded the country. After they started paying back, they started kind of getting on their feet. America went in and raided them again. And after America raided them again, they helped a bank called Credit Industrial, which came in there and took over in terms of how they were going to raise their money. And then when a little known president by the name of Jean Bertrand Aristide said that he was getting ready to file with the UN for reparations against France for all the money that they had stolen, guess what happened to him? America went in and deposed him as leader of Haiti.
Mm.
So, when I started reading down through there, it was a crazy set of events of how they would keep on enslaving the Haitians by getting them into debt, by undercutting what they were doing, by keeping them. And so they kept on paying the reparations fee and they kept getting worse and worse. And then folks asked, why is Haiti so poor?
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Right.
because America joined with France to help arrange a situation where that country, black country, would never be seen as a powerful country. And once I saw that, and then I looked at the article on the lady from Oklahoma, this was the first line I said. I said, ain't no reparations coming. No matter what the public opinion is, no matter how we feel about it, ain't nobody going, America cannot afford to pay what it owes. And if they start to owe too much, then they're going to start a war. And they owe China a lot of money. So guess who they're trying to start a war with now? Anybody want to guess? Come on, you got 3 seconds. Free trip to
Go. Who?
China.
China or Russia.
Yeah, America is in debt to China, and they
Right.
keep picking a fight with China, trying to stop because they don't want to have to pay what they owe, and they have a large debt to China. You see, that's what happens as a rule with America. About 10 years ago, up in New York, there was a treaty signed between America and the indigenous people of New York, upstate New York, and it said, we'll let you white people stay on this land for 100 years. And after that 100 years, you'll have to give us this land back. And the white folks signed it. And lo and behold, when the time came to give the land back, you know what America said? our fingers would cross behind our back. We ain't giving you nothing.
Ain't happening.
You know, it ain't happening.
So what did they do? They tried to buy it from them, or
No,
what?
they were supposed to give it back to the indigenous people.
I know, but when you say I'm going to let you stay on my land for 100 years, what is America paying the indigenous people so that they can stay on the land? Nothing.
Oh no, nothing. They just
Nothing.
they gave them the land for $1. Just that was part of the treaty that they said us. Let us stay here for 100 years, and at the end of 100 years, we'll give you this land back. See, so
And then you don't develop it and they don't improve. Ain't no way in hell they giving it back.
that's right. That's right. Because it's all kind of industrial stuff, residential neighborhoods on that land. America does not like to pay its debts,
No.
which could be probably why America is in so much debt today. You know,
Mhm.
they just keep running the debt up, keep raising the debt ceiling because they don't have to pay their debts back. Because guess what, Jeanette? I owe you $1 million and you come to me and say, pay me. And I say to you, I tell you what, I'm gonna blow up your house. I'm gonna blow up your mama's house. I'm gonna blow up your sister's house. I'm gonna blow up everybody's house around you if you come and ask me for this money. Now what you gonna do?
Well, what the other countries got to stop doing is allowing for war to be fought on their grounds. Why isn't a war fought over here?
Why would you do that?
I'm saying the other countries, not us, but I'm just
Why
saying.
don't they come to America?
Yeah, why would I let you come to my country?
Okay, yeah.
But
Now,
we're powerful. There.
well, you know, so I think it was World War One. The Germans were getting ready to come over here and blow up the harbors in New York and all that. And America went into prison. There was a guy there, you might have heard of him, called Lucky Luciano. Look him up sometime. He was the biggest drug dealer in America. And they went to Lucky Luciano and said, look, if you will go and get your people and keep these Germans out of our docks, we'll let you keep selling dope from jail. And they let him sell drugs from jail in a plush cell just so America could guarantee that nobody came over here to fight. You know, so that's the way America is. They'll cut a deal in a minute, Mona. They're not gonna let you come here and fight nothing.
And then if we could even only get ADOS men's and women's not to even fight in this war, the next war. I don't understand how we fight in these wars.
What about you talking about being a conscientious projector? Is that what you're trying to say?
Absolutely.
That has never worked. We fight in these wars. We're on the front lines, just like you said.
Yeah, and before, but what made me come to that realizations over in Iraq, and you saw all the evilness that those people did, killing innocent people, and you have to say to yourself, what did these people do to you? Come on,
That's what
we're not
Muhammad Ali said. Muhammad Ali said that, yeah.
we're not these kind of people. We're not animals like that. So yeah.
Except being a part of the armed services. I know they come into our high schools. They recruit our babies, if you will, and send them all off to war because and parents are like, yeah, that's a laudable job. It's
Well,
something that we want our kids to have.
it's good when we're in peace, but if they go into war, we all need to back out. I mean, if we're in peace, okay, but why go over there and die for what? For what? For a lie? Because we found out.
Because we're patriotic.
But we're
So we get you to be patriotic.
we're not either.
What's that?
I said, she said we're patriotic. I said we're not, and white people ain't either because they're so damn patriotic. They won't even take care of them when they come home.
So they won't take care of the troops when they come home. That's sort of like reparations. That makes
Right.
my case that I just said earlier. You know, America ain't paying nobody for nothing. Once
Nothing.
I'm through with you, or you're the cannon fodder I use as the front to take a dive. You know, basically pull white folks and black folks and brown folks get a chance to be on the front line, dying for a cause that they don't even know what it is. So those are the things. So knowing all of that, I'm back to my original. How do you think, and why do you think America would even consider paying Black folk reparations?
And I think today that consideration is non-existent. They're not going to consider it today.
Even with the ADOS group that you're talking, the American, what is that? ADOS is American Descendants of Slavery. That organization there, even with them fighting.
I think that organization is making inroads. I do believe there is progress. And as a result of the type of research that they do, and the kind of discussions and the movement they're creating amongst people, the discussions used to not happen at all, but now they're happening. And now you're seeing certain states, albeit blue states, that are entertaining the question through government. So we're starting to see remnants of moving in that direction. And it may be that we don't see it during our time, but if we stop talking about it, if we stop studying it, if we stop doing what they are doing, then you're right. But we have to make that steady movement so that that 4% that became 16%, which is now at 30%, who says, yeah, I do believe Black people deserve reparations. Then you start reaching the 40%, 50%. Now you're talking about something that could go to Congress and pass pass the Senate or the House. Right now, HR 40 dead on arrival, just as Mitch McConnell said, because there's no pressure on any of them from their constituents to say, hey, we want you to consider this. There's no pressure. And it's less about the politicians and it's more about the people that we interact with every single day and their understanding of, are you just a lazy behind Black person, or did we do something that causes you to be at the bottom of everything? And those are the discussions that the politicians or the rich people who keep those politicians in place do not want to happen. And there's where our energy needs to be, in my opinion. So that's how I answer your question.
So here's my conspiracy theory. I want y'all to follow me. When President Biden said he was going to pay the student loan and the debts for the students, the day he said it, I said BS. That will never happen. And he used that as part of his campaign speech to get everybody excited and keep everybody talking to get behind his cause by saying, I'm going to pay off the student debt. Now, we already know what has just come to light. Let me put it like that. What has come to light is that he had some of his counselors, some of his attorneys to say, you don't have the authority to do that. But he kept saying it anyway. Why am I telling you that story? Because the same reason that these people like California and other more blue states are now having discussions around reparations, it's theater for them. It helps them get votes for their particular candidates that they're trying to get them to support, the idea that they're bringing up the idea of reparations. I do not think that any of those entities that are making that thing are, no, I say those entities are just like Biden. They got no authority to issue reparations, first off, and therefore their discussion is just a discussion.
Who have the authority?
Well, that's where they're trying to work their way up, and that's why I say we'll never get to reparations. See, I think we as Black people are looking at it wrong. For instance, we're looking at it, we're trying to parse out whether or not you should prove that you're black and was a slave. We're trying to parse out, should we give money to rich black folks? Should we parse out if you just moved here from the Bahamas last generation, should you get it? And I think we should be doing it the other way. We should be figuring out how much the white folks owe us, and then we should put it in a bank somewhere, and then worry about distributing it after that.
Well,
See,
they already figured out how much they got. And I don't know how much it is, but it has been done. And I'm somewhat on agreement with that as well. I don't think we need to just start giving it out right now. There's so much other stuff, and it's a lot that they want. Not only just say money per se, but it's a lot of other stuff.
well, but for first, see, the three of us could argue all day about what will happen when we get the money. But if we don't turn around and get the money, our arguments are worthless.
Yeah.
You see, our arguments are whether or not I believe Adolf should get it or anybody black that's living here should get it. You know, you can have that discussion afterwards, but until you get the money in your hand,
I hear
until
you.
you have it sitting over there in the Black Bank of America, drawing interest, until you have all of that, what is the value of our discussion?
Right.
That's the reason. See, I think this fight between Adolf and Pan-Africanism, which we haven't even talked about, but the short answer is Adolf's people are saying that Pan-Africanist people are hindering the process because they want to bring in more than people who can prove that they are descendants of slavery. You see, and I think that's another distraction that will keep us from the real issue is how much money. Let's get a term. Let's find out. Somebody has come up, there's 2 or 3 figures out there. Let's find out how much money. And then after we find out how much money, why don't we do this? Collect the money.
Makes sense.
See, until we collect the money, don't stand in line. Ain't no need of standing in line for Beyonce if she ain't gonna be here for 5 years.
Hey, they'll talk about maybes.
Yeah. See, maybes don't count. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Wasting our time. Hey,
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
Yeah, we're wasting our time hoping that and I know what's gonna happen when it comes to the Supreme Court. They're gonna use the phrase that they've been using recently. In fact, by the way, they're getting ready to get rid of race as a position in America. Well, in fact, the world. Because you know white boy rule 101 is, don't you? When I'm about to lose, I change the rule.
Yeah.
That's very true. And I do believe, and I don't disagree with the getting rid of the terminology race. I do believe lineage is the way to go.
They're making it either way, they're the same thing.
No, they're not.
Either way, they're the same thing.
No,
Tell me
not.
how they see, and this is where the fight is. Tell me the difference. Tell me the difference.
My lineage ties me to let's just look at white people, right?
No. Deal with yourself. Start with you and your Bahama.
Well, I'm just gonna deal with white folks at this point because I know there are Irish Americans and there are the folks from England and the folks from Italy and whatever, Italian Americans, etc. But if they come together on the white, then they have power because you got power in numbers. But when you start separating them, that dilutes all of that. Same thing happens in the Black community. Whatever I am, and I'm going to call it African American, I'm going to tie myself to a continent because I can't figure out the country that I actually belong to. But the Nigerian Americans, the Jamaican Americans, wherever they come, however they want to deal with that because they were dropped off too, the Ghanaian Americans, whatever, I think we need to pay more attention to that. If you do that, Black people in America that have ties, and this is an ADOS position, that have ties to slavery can better define their harm and get what's due. And now I'm not talking that it's not a question for Nigerian Americans at that point. It becomes whether you're rich or poor, if you can tie yourself to African American as it gets described against all the other ethnicities, you now have a legitimate claim, and affirmative action can't help you because it's helping everybody else, but nobody else can lay claim to the fact that you were a descendant of slaves, as you are able to prove that.
So here's what's getting ready to happen.
Albert,
I don't
how
know.
was
Go
he able
ahead.
to identify the Native Americans who get reparation now, or whatever they're calling it?
They became a separate country. Actually, most of the indigenous
On the
people
reservations.
they have their own, technically they have their own country, and that's how they're being paid back through the gambling joints they're giving them and things like that. So that's what they did. And on top of that, the big trick was this: you had to be a part of that particular group and accepted by the leader of that particular group, because out in Oklahoma, there's a big fight right now because the Black Seminoles say we're due part of this as well. And you know what the government said? No, you were either freedmen or you were slaves. And if you were freedmen or slaves, you didn't have any rights to any of this. So they're not giving up the money.
And so, mostly a lot of African Americans like to say, "Oh, we're half Indian." Oh, your grandparents or your grandfather was half Indian, and so you see how they said this strictly got to be for 100% indigenous people. So what's the problem?
Okay.
Well, not all indigenous people are eligible for, aren't there different tribes
Well,
getting different
well,
things?
of course, there are different tribes or groups of them who have different ruling. And what they did was they made a distinction. They wouldn't allow, like I said, they wouldn't allow the African descendants to claim part of that. For instance, the Seminole, quote unquote, tribe did not exist until African people started running away to Florida. And they were called the Seminoles, which was Spanish for runaways. That's where it started. These are the Seminoles. And then Indians or Native Americans or indigenous people started following these Africans down into Florida. And they joined together as a collective group to build a nation of their own in Florida, protected by Spain. Once America heard about it, they didn't want anybody in the South to know that African people had snuck off to Florida and that they were now living a free life. So what did they do? They said, oh, this Indian tribe is living down there. Well, what's the name of them? Seminoles. That's where the Seminoles came from. So now they come back and it's time to pay the Seminoles. And the government says we're ready to pay the indigenous people, but we're not going to pay anybody that was called a freedman or anybody that was enslaved by the that group, which were Cherokee, Choctaw, and there were two other different. It was a whole mixture of different indigenous people tied up in there. So are you following all this that I'm saying? So I'm telling you, that's the same way they're gonna come back and break us up. That's what ADOS is technically doing. They're breaking us up so that the argument goes between each of us black folk again, and we're not resolving the issue of give me my money.
Resolve the issue.
Yeah, the issue to resolve this issue is I got $3 trillion sitting over here in the bank. I'm gonna divide between some of y'all. Now the argument begins. You see, but as long as the three of us keep arguing before the 3 trillion gets into the bank, it's a worthless argument. You know, so I mean that's.
But if I'm I hear what you're saying, and I almost went there, but it's like I'm still not there with you. But if you and I are fighting for that 3 trillion, and we don't know who's going to get it, but we're fighting for the 3 trillion. Once that 3 trillion gets into the bank, now we're still talking. Now we got to decide who gets the 3 trillion.
That's fine. See,
that ain't gonna work, because
why not?
If it's between the three of us and we decide, well, we know you fought with us, Albert, but we're gonna just do this for women. And you said, but I was fighting for it with you as well. And it's like, no, but we're just gonna do it for women because this is how we believe that 3 trillion should be paid.
That's fine.
And that ain't fine.
I'm going to get me a woman.
Why?
If you do that, I'm going to get me a woman immediately. You see what I'm saying? That's fine. But for us to try to do it before the money is sitting there. See, for instance, my theory was
Either way is
anybody black, just divide the money up 20 different trillion different ways. It's more than what we had, but for sure, I want them, the ones who incurred the debt, to pay the debt.
Sure.
You see, that's my theory. Pay the debt, and then let us worry about distributing the debt.
All right, so let's just say that we're out there, we're working in the fields, and you two are out there working in the fields for like for a month. And then I come along last 2 days and I come and says, hey, you know what? You need a hand, I'm going to help you out. And then the man comes and he pays you for the entire month's worth of work that you just did. Well, you've been there for 28 days and I've been there for just 2 days. How in the world do we divvy that up?
Well, see,
do we do it 3 ways?
Why not? It don't hurt. I mean,
because that is not realistic.
Okay.
In anybody's way of seeing the world.
If you are grabbing and they're hoping that you'll have this argument till you die, they want you to be just like the lady in Oklahoma, be 107 years old, writing your book about how you got to fight with Mona one night on the air, with Albert one night on the air, and none of us are any richer than we were. And the guy who stole the money from us is sitting over there with a toothpick in his mouth, mint julep in his hand, and he is just singing Sweet Dixie to the day I die, because he's gonna pass it along like he received it from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. So you might have been deserved $10, Jeanette. Mona might have been deserved $10, but if you get 8, that was better than the 0 you had. And that's the position that I'm thinking that ultimately we ought to come to.
I don't think we'll ever come to that position.
Well, and why not? You know why?
I'm listening to the conversation. I'm listening to the conversations, and the conversations are not taking us down that path.
Because we are still using the lens of American views on life, and that is everything is individual rather than communal.
Now we do look at everything as us, we. I'm definitely not individual, and what I think they think, once it happened here, it will happen with France. They will get theirs.
So let me ask you something, Mona.
I think so
too.
Jeanette's
position is that we're never going to divide it equally between the 3 of us. Somebody was here longer. Somebody worked a little bit harder. Somebody sweated a little bit harder. So do you believe that position, or do you believe the communal position that says if it's 3 of us, then it should be divided 3 ways?
It's going to be divided equally among Adolf's people.
Well, that's not the question.
That wasn't the question I asked.
You got to answer the question, because I want to know your answer to the question that
I'm not Adolf's. But I'm black and I'm here, and
I got here in 1970.
I got here 70, and I'm still catching hell just like you still catching hell, and there that money is sitting there. And I believe that we ought to say if it's $3 in the pot, everybody gets $1. Your position is I've been here 3 times longer than you, so I ought to get $1.75. Jeanette ought to get $1.25, and then by the way, you get 10 cents. Is that your position? Or is it my position of divided equally $1 each? Which is
it? Well, if we just, I don't like to what if? I really don't. Don't like to do that. But if
no, she did not do that.
All right, Mona, come on.
No, she did not do that.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, did she do that? Come on,
Mona.
Come on, Mona. Come on, break it down for me.
We know you. Come on.
I said If we had to do it, yes, we would have to do it equally.
Okay, so she believes she's in my camp. So you outvoted.
I don't even believe Mona's in your camp. I don't know what you're talking about.
She said she said everybody gets
I
$1
heard
piece.
what she said. I heard.
I don't want to lose it, because we couldn't come to that agreement if whatever they
Mona,
said. So I
Mona,
would, yes.
Simple. Divide
we
whatever it is
are
by
out.
however many we are.
We are out working all day long in the hot sun.
I know.
Comes in, we get paid, and I just come there for the last 5 minutes, but we get paid, and then we got to divide it in terms of what you get, what Albert gets, and what I get. And if you've been there for 8 hours and I've been there for 5 minutes, you say we divide it equally.
How else can you do it right now?
The other
Okay.
choice is to leave it on the table. What's the other choice?
The other
There is
choice.
no other
Hold
choice.
up.
Now
The other choice is to leave it with the man who stole the money from you in the first place.
Right. So then, right, if that's the only choice we're presented with, then we would have to go that route.
Okay.
So what, we're out.
Divide it equally. If that's the only choice.
I don't think you're understanding.
I think that's a good place for us to end this show.
I really do. And I really I think that as we go to the polls and we have to figure out how we navigate, because we do have different factions, and I do believe Pan-Africanism, as you said, and ADOS,
yeah.
probably going to be advising different ways of approaching this next election. I think that I don't even think reparations is going to really become an issue that people are paying attention to with everything else that's going on. But I think Black people, we need to start having these discussions and need to start making a plan as to how we're going to make this happen. And I get what you said, that it ain't happening. It's just not going to happen.
Nope.
I believe that it can, but it's going to depend on what we do to prepare for that. What's the plan? And I think what ADOS is doing in terms of all the research and the work and the forums is great, because that's how I'm becoming informed. But until we start doing that, you're right, it's never going to happen.
Mona, your last words.
We're leaving it to them. Mine is there's a distinct group.
Mona, leave with your last words, please.
There is a distinct group. That's and we have to make that determination right now. There's a distinct group that was harmed. We need to agree on that.
I agree that it is an extinct group. It is the ADOS people. I do believe it's going to happen. I believe that we have to get one more Republican as president, and then 2 Democrats after that, and then we'll see. It'll start moving. I also want to say that's my favorite picture. One of my favorite pictures of your drawings that's behind you. I love it.
I thought she was talking about my red sweater that I had on. I thought she was praising the red sweater for its value.
Mine looks like black, but it's actually blue. We're wearing blue tonight.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. And I'm gonna leave you with my grandmother's favorite saying. She just simply said, "Ain't no reparations coming." It's all a sham, and all the theory that you talk about. Because, as Mona has aptly pointed out, there is a group of people looking at this process of how they're going to put it together to make sure that ain't no reparations coming.